And we're live. Good afternoon, David.
Hi there. Right.
This is going to be an interesting one, this one, because we're
Yeah.
going to rattle through these Scottish stories.
I'm sure Gingers is with us on this, right? And all what I've got to say to Gingers is, for goodness sake, get out and do a food shop before much longer, all right? Because it looks like those tariffs are going to have a biting effect on some of the people of America. So a lot of the people of America.
Very
Anyway,
much. Yeah.
How you doing?
No bad, David. And hello, everyone. It's the 3rd to the 4th, 2025, the day after Trump's Liberation Day.
Yes. Viva la liberation.
Aye, viva la liberation. Hold on, phone. Where's my bloody phone? Yeah, Facebook on board.
Well, you shouldn't have. I bet you took it to get a coffee. Huh?
No, I didn't. I don't know where I've left it, so I'll just get Facebook up on the computer.
Talking about, Madam Director, where's my coffee?
Oh, no coffee. Right, edit post. Nope, edit privacy. Where are we? Edit audience. Make it public.
Yeah. Better not make it Republic.
Aye. Right, that's Facebook on board. Now, folks, we're going to be spending most of the second half of this programme talking about tariffs, its effect on Scotland. And David and I have had a wee look. The UK press are no keen on giving UK figures, so we went to Europe to see what they said. The effect of Trump's tariffs would be on UK GDP, and it seems to match up with the Scottish figures, so it's going to make it easier for us to translate for you. Now, we also have a wee game for you to play in the second half of the programme, and that is throw the name of a country in the comments, and we'll tell you how much tariffs Trump slapped on them. But we'll get to that. First, we'll get some issues here in Scotland which need to be dealt with.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Duncan. Good afternoon. A good rant today, please, David. We'll try our best. Oh. Last week it was him who gave you a rant the last program.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry about that, Duncan.
No, not at all. You carry right on your boy, like a rant.
But Duncan, I hope you're feeling better now. Really good.
Right, let's start off with the story that Patrick Harvey intends to stand down as the co-convener of the Green Party here in Scotland. Now, just in case we've got viewers UK-wide, the Green Party in Scotland is a totally different party from the Green Party in England and Wales, and they have recently broke off their association with the Green Party of England and Wales for reasons of their own. I don't know quite sure what they were, but they have. Well,
the way the Scottish Greens were a party of independence, with Patrick leaving, or not leaving, but Patrick standing down. Is it still going to be a party of independence?
Now, that's a bloody good question, David. That's what brings it to our attention, because we don't quite know which direction the party is going to go in.
You've got to. We're looking at the Greens as giving the SNP a bit of a hike up in terms of the 2026 election, and
we don't know what they're going to stand for.
Yeah, if they don't stand for independence, then what are we doing?
Then we won't have a pro-independence parliament, because we're not predicted to take enough seats by ourselves.
Right. I'm sure there are people out there that are watching this and maybe not putting up a comment, and they go, "Don't talk nonsense. Of course we want independence." But there are people that might be members of the Green Party that are not for independence, and they are quite happy for that direction.
As you know, Warner Slater said it's a environment first, then independence.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
I'm all for anything to do with the environment, right? With something that Warner Slater did that I did agree with was they say, protected part of the sea, part of the fishing grounds.
Yeah, and it worked.
And everybody was shouting about it, and then all of a sudden they found, oh, wait a minute, hang on a second, it's all come back to life again.
Stephen, appearances can be deceiving, and Lorna's only one party member.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, fair enough comment, Stephen, but at the same time, it's like, it's a party, political party has got many different people shouting from different directions. Anyway, right, so, yeah, again, this is something that we've got to look at as being something we'll watch. We're in a watching brief as far as the Greens are concerned.
But Alexander makes a good point. Lorna Indy is not a red line Slater. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember, we don't know who is going to be the next co-convener with her. Jamie Greer's probably in the running.
Yeah,
Mr. Greer is definitely pro-independence. But we will find out the direction the Green Party will be taking when we get their manifesto for next year's Holyrood election. Now, if they stick on the independence hobby horse, that's what got them to the 10 MSPs they've got the now. That's what will keep them there, if they'll make them bigger again.
Yeah.
But as I say, it is something to worry about. Right, now the next story is quite an interesting one because of what this particular person has to say about the party that he's just left, and that is Jamie Green, Conservative MSP. Now, he's quit the Conservative Party in Holyrood, and as of effective, has told the party he no longer wants to hold the party whip. Now, his reasons behind it, David, are quite interesting. He says that the new leader, Russell Finlay, is taking them in a Trump-esque direction here in Scotland, and he says that the Conservative Party as a whole, UK-wide, is caught up in a grotesque dance for the right of politics with Nigel Farage.
Well, if you look at Kemi Badenoch or Keir Starmer, both of them are trying to out-reform. Said that many times in the past, right? So this guy resigning, is it going to make a difference to my life? No, it won't. However, the point he makes is maybe, in truth, where do you get reform members from? Dead simple. They're not knitted. They're actually brought across from either Labour or from Tory.
I've got a funny feeling he just had a look at the Tory party the same way that Neil Finlay had a look at the Labour Party and went, this isn't my party. And that's exactly what he says. You know, he's a one nation conservative, an old fashioned conservative, you know what I mean? The one that we knew growing up in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and so on, you know, the proper Tories, the real toffs, the landed gentry. You know, he considers himself to be a one nation conservative and a party that has evolved into something other than what he's politically affiliated with. And that's basically what Neil Finlay said when he resigned from the Labour Party.
Yeah, when they both joined the SNP, or somebody else.
That would be a right blow if they both joined the SNP and declared for independence. But it is interesting. You've got a couple of big hitters in Scottish politics on the Tory party and the Labour Party. And when you look at the reasons for leaving their respective parties, they're very, very similar. They have both said, I don't recognise the party that I joined. You don't represent my point of views anymore. You don't represent my politics anymore. Terribly sorry, I can't stomach this anymore.
Well, also you've got to look at the point that Reform up in Scotland are doing very little in the way of campaigning, right? It's mainly because the main campaigner for Reform is Nigel Farage.
Yes.
And people that are into Reform in Scotland basically just look at Nigel Farage. It's a blood. I'd love to go and have a pint with. He's all right, isn't he?
He's that guy. Let's go get a pint.
Come here, guys.
Coffee fucking barra boy. That's all he is. He's another fucking Trump.
Something rather interesting happened. I've been giving a lot of thought to this, as is David, right? we watched how Marine Le Pen was done for embezzlement.
Yes.
She was made 5 years. She's not allowed to take part in elections,
Yep.
which means that she's not going to become the French president, right? End of. But then what we had was the 4-year thing came out. Now, 4 years in jail, 2 of those suspended,
Yep.
and you're going to wear the things. And I said to David, what do you think of that? David went, I've got no information on that whatsoever.
It wasn't until the following day looking at European press that I seen it.
Yeah. And the people in Canada, they were getting it as well. They were actually getting the full news, right?
Yep.
Why is it that the British broadcasting firmament took it on themselves to try and bury this 4-year sentence? Reason being is because the person that is going to be done for embezzlement, or we think, regarding the EU, is going to be Nigel Farage, and I think they want to bury the idea of him ending up with a commensurate sentence with Marine Le Pen of being 4 years in prison. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Well, we do know that Nigel has been investigated. He has paid back funds to the EU.
He's only been investigated so far. If the broadcasting media put out the fact that Marine Le Pen had this 4 years, and they themselves made the thing, and don't forget we have Nigel Farage who has been investigated for the same thing. So why are they not asking? Why is he not being investigated in the same way? And as far as I'm concerned, the British media, mainstream media, are up to their blooming ankles in it.
Well, anyway, moving on, we've got a wee twist to politics here in Scotland. Now, it appears that Mr. Flynn is going to make a run for Holyrood. Now that Audrey Nicholl has declared that 1 term in Holyrood's been enough for her.
Very good, Audrey. Yeah.
Leaving Kincardine North and Aberdeen South open for Stephen to run in.
Yeah.
And it looks like he is going to be selected.
And also, if he's going to be selected as a runner for MSP in that area, if he wins that area, how long we're going to wait until he ends up with the First Minister of Scotland?
Don't know, but I know that the minute he wins it, he has to resign his MP seat, and he's also going to pay for the by-election in his constituency.
Yes. Yeah. Ouch.
Ouch. 10 grand.
Yeah.
But he's willing to do that.
Yes.
As for how that will affect the future of the party, that remains to be seen.
Told you. See, since I gave him that blooming nickname of the Hitman, honestly, the guy's done well. He really has.
A fucking wet lettuce. I'd kick his ass up and down the street.
Aye, Stephen's alright.
I know, I'll tell him I'm sorry. I'll still kick his ass up. Need to get him on, actually.
It's like, if you want to be dear somebody, right? Say, let's say it's me and David talking about somebody else. We think you're a right bastard, but no, everybody thinks you're a right bastard, but we think you're alright.
It's like, folks, I'm going to censor the words here, but I was listening to the wife and her workmate coming out of work yesterday, and the workmate was calling the wife an old C-O-W.
Yeah.
And the wife's pal the wife was saying to her pal, "Shut up, you C-N-T."
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And the two of them are approaching me, I'm going like, funny what the terms of endearment here in Scotland are, isn't it? Thanks, Gary. Independent now, thank you. Some funny terms of endearment here, the things that we say, which could be construed as rude, but are actually the sort of things you say to your dear friend, like when I call you a silly old son and things like that, you know what I mean? Like you call me a daft, or if you call me a daft bata,
No, but you other phrases like, oh, that's a dog's bollocks. That means that it's amazing, it's brilliant, right?
Aye.
But if you look at a dog's balls, you think, oh no, it's something that a dog licks, and you don't want that, you know.
No, you
Yeah.
can't date yourself. Anyway, let's move on for this nonsense, shall we? So it looks like Stephen's going to take a crack at Holyrood. What happens after he gets there, if he gets there, could be interesting. That's as far as I'm willing to go with that.
Well, if you imagine that.
I'm not going to imagine, David. That's what I'm
No,
saying.
no,
That's
no, 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 no. Let's put a wee.
You imagine. I am not going to.
I imagine, right? Okay, a wee bit of conspiracy theory. We'll drop down the rabbit hole, right? Is that Stephen's been talking to Nicola, right? And Stephen said, I'm going to put my hat in the ring for this up the road, right? And he says, I want to become the first minister, right? And Nicola will say, yeah, I've been thinking about getting that. I've got an offer for the UN. It's one of the jobs that they've got. How's about I head for the UN and you get in and do that? And what I'll do is at the UN I'll push for Scotland being decolonised. How's about that?
Well, as I say, it's only rumoured she's been offered a position in the UN, but as far as I can see, she's decided to enter the comedy circuit.
Yeah, huh?
She's up for Davy Godley's spot. Okay. Right, let's move on, because this one's really interesting, folks. And that is that the head of the Scottish Prison Service has stated in the inquiry into the deaths of into two young people published
Can you give the name of the person that's in charge?
I will do, yes, when I get there. I want to do a wee bit of background first. Now, there's been an inquiry going on into two young people who took their lives a while in prison here in Scotland. And another 44 people actually have taken their lives in prison in Scotland. But the prison service is above prosecution. So their families carry through the prison service. Now, people say to yourself, hey, they're above prosecution, but we'll get there, all right? Anyway, prison boss, during these inquiries, Teresa Melhurst, Medhurst, Patricia Medhurst, says prison service immunity from prosecution should end. Now, a lot of people won't know that the prison service is immune from prosecution, and they won't understand why the prison service is immune from prosecution. And that's why I thought this would be an interesting story, folks. The reason being is because in some areas the Crown is still immune from prosecution. And His Majesty's Prisons is one such area. Now, it also used to be up until 1997 that the military couldn't sue the Crown either. But the law was changed in 1997 to then allow the Crown to be sued by military personnel.
Right.
And, of course, people who were affected by the military that maybe damaged their property on exercise, or maybe they were a nuisance in the area where they were based, that sort of thing. They could then sue the Crown. But when it comes to the prison service, it is still above the law. And it can't be prosecuted for the deaths of young people in the service. They can't be sued. And that is because it's His Majesty's Prison Service.
Now, what would have happened if Prince Andrew had ended up in prison, right? And he was actually attacked by one of the prison officers, right? So you think to yourself, who's getting who here?
Well, the prison officer would be done with assault.
Right.
But Andrew wouldn't then have the right to sue his brother for hiring a psycho prison officer.
Is that also why King Big Ears can not get done for being an idiot?
Oh no, he can. I mean, his sister's been prosecuted. You know, there is areas where the monarch himself can be prosecuted.
Oh, wonderful.
Highly unlikely that it would ever happen.
Get the books out on that and let's have a look.
Anyway, the point that was being made is very similar to the point that was being made about the SNP want to split up the position of Dorothy Bain to being the Crown Prosecutor and Government Advisor.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why we were talking about Westminster no doing it because it takes both parliaments to change the 1998 Scotland Act in this particular area. And the reason why Westminster won't do it is Crown immunity. Crown immunity, that's one of the reasons why they won't split her rules. Okay, as the head of the Crown Prosecution Service in Scotland. So there you go, folks. It would be interesting for you to know that there are still Crown institutions which are above the law. Which are above the law. Which institutions? You've got a search engine. Have fun.
Well, one of the institutions that I know that's immune is HM Customs Excise.
Correct. But David, shush! I tell them they've got a search engine. Go look. It's all about research. It's good fun.
Yeah.
It is good fun. Right, and the last of the Scottish issues apart from tariffs that we're going to get on to today is Alistair Union Jack has been granted a knighthood in Rishi Sunak's resignation honours list, apparently. Now, Mr. Jack's final position in office before he didn't run for the last Westminster election, because he knew he was getting knighthood and a seat in the House of Lords, because it's important to stress he is getting a seat in the House of Lords. As Alistair Jack was under investigation for placing bets on when the general election was going to take place. Right after he said he wasn't going to run, the Gambling Commission dropped the investigation.
Right.
It only just hit the table and it went straight in the shredder. That's a bit like footballers betting on outcomes of games, you know. Did Alistair Jack have inside information? Well, one of his bets come in. You know. But he was being clever. If he spread it over a few dates, it wouldn't look as if he already knew.
Yep.
But I do believe that Michael Gove was tied up in that wheezing off, if I remember correctly.
What, was his nose covered in white powder again, was it?
No, but he was betting on when the election was going to be and all. There was a good few of them in cabinet actually at the time that were betting on when the election was going to be.
Well, that line's a bit longer than that line. I think we'll go with that one. So that means that it's going to be on the was it 7th of May? Is it? Aye, okay.
Anyway, the bad news is, folks, as long as we're in this union, Alistair Union Jack will be back in the legislature.
Yeah. Let's get about. Time for independence, independence, independence. And
right, let's get to the fun part of the show, which isn't really fun, it's bloody serious.
Right.
And that is, of course, Trump's tariffs and the predicted effects on the Scottish and UK economy.
Now, you're going to talk your fair way through this, all right? Let me have a wee preamble, right? Please remember, at the moment, nothing's happened to you. Yeah, you've seen the Liberation Day thing on the news and all the rest of it. You've heard about the Fraser Valander doing numbers for Scotland. I've got questions with that, but anyway, and then effectively nothing really's happened to you. It doesn't come into effect until Sunday night, going through on Monday morning, right? But even at that, nothing's immediately going to happen to you. It's going to take a few weeks, maybe even a month or two, before you start seeing the biting effects coming in. So beware of that. Right, David, on you go.
I'm just looking at the viewing figures, David, and it would appear the weather's taking about a hit over our viewers. We're 50 viewers lighter than normal. I would put that down to the good weather, I expect, because I have noticed that over the last couple of days I've been going into lives, and the amount of people watching them have been less and less. Especially the daytime lives, because people are out in their gardens and things like that, you know.
Weren't we on the tariffs list, no?
Right, anyway, back to Trump's tariffs and predicted the effects on the Scottish and UK economies. Now we've had a wee look about, David, although we did have to go to Europe because the UK media don't particularly want to tell us how badly it's going to hit the UK economy. But we do have figures for Scotland to the Fraser of Allender Institute, who spent all night crunching the fucking numbers. And as you said, David, you wonder why they spent all night crunching the numbers and we're not getting the numbers coming out elsewhere.
I have my theories, but really what you've got to do is you've got to look at what Richard Murphy says about the Fraser of Allender, right? And Fraser of Allender, in all honesty, opens up a burning question. The Fraser of Allender Institute can lie that Scotland is responsible for 60% of the UK deficit in one of their previous articles, and that the nonsense they make up using JARS, then how can we trust what they say about the US tariffs regarding Scotland? As far as I'm concerned, Fraser of Allender are no friend of Scotland's. End of.
The numbers that were borne out with the European figures we were looking at, David.
Yeah, it's fine, but...
And I know you have got something against the Fraser. You've gone on about the Fraser Allender all day.
What I look at is I look at a think tank like Fraser Allender, and I think your agenda has always been against Scotland, to make Scotland look small, wee, poor, weak, right?
They're actually reflecting the truth of where Scotland is within the UK economy. It's just that because of the Scottish Parliament, they're given a Scottish perspective. They have done specifically since Holyrood opened up.
Well,
as a University of Strathclyde think tank. But as I say, they were the first one out the stable this morning. They're the only one out the stable here in Scotland that I've been able to see so far.
Yeah.
So we'll give the people their predictions.
Yeah.
What the people make of their predictions is up to themselves. What you make of their predictions is up to yourself.
Yeah,
what I'm making them. I won't make any of their predictions. And what I do see with Mr. Murphy is he gives us a roundabout where these things are going to end up. He's not very specific on numbers.
Very insightful. Very insightful.
Oh, if you take his point of view.
Yeah.
But I might not take his point of view the same way you don't like you don't take the Fraser of Allender's point of view.
Before you get into it, then, do you want to play Richard Murphy's?
No, I'm going to play him second because the specific figures which are offered for Scotland are more important to our lives.
Alright, okay.
If they are correct, David. We'll see when the Joseph Rowntree Foundation's figures hit the table, when the Carnegie figures hit the table, when the OBR's figures hit the table, and when the BOE figures hit the table. We'll see if the Fraser of Allender Institute is correct. But at this point in time, they're all I've got to go on for Scotland.
So the Fraser of Allender figures, you look at them and you think, right, okay, they're saying that they're 10 million. 10 million what? Elephants? Bananas? They don't really tell you.
Specifically talking about the tariffs effect on GDP, gross domestic product.
Okay. And what does GDP tell you?
It supposedly tells you how well the economy is performing. You and I know it's not a good way of measuring it, but it is the measurement that we use.
Yeah.
So whether you or I like it, these are the metrics we have to work with.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. Because unless somebody with a well-being economy wants to start fucking modelling, which they do.
You have the ability at any time to change that parameter anytime we like.
Of course we have, but nobody is. Everybody's talking about a well-being economy, but nobody's worked out how to measure it.
Yeah, they have. There are quite a few methods of
quite a few different metrics
he's doing, right?
Well, until a well-being economy exists, we don't know which of the metrics are actually going to work.
Yeah, we do, because it's
we don't, David. We've got models, but we don't have an economy to base them on.
Based on stuff that we know.
Based on their figures against GDP figures.
Right. All I'm trying to say is that the Fraser of Allender figures that you are quoting basically could be a load of nonsense.
Yes, and so could the ones for the Bank of England, the OBR, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Carnegie, Joseph Rowntree, economic projections.
What's the lesson we take away from this?
All the economists make a cunt to it, that's the lesson. But it doesn't matter, this is the metric we've got to work with.
The lesson that we take away from this is the fact that it doesn't matter who it is that put figures together They're too early. The reason the Fraser of Allender worked their fucking bunions off to get those figures
And your
out.
opinion is to belittle the Scottish economy.
Yes,
I get that.
absolutely.
That's your opinion, David. But you don't have a very high opinion of the Fraser of Allender Institute.
I turn towards you guys and I go, what do you think?
That's it. Ask them what they think. Because they might think GDP figures is a good measurement.
You got on to.
Now, what do you call it? The audience might think GDP figures are a good metric to measure the economy. I don't know. But what I do know is how the UK does it at this point in time. Anyway, how does the Fraser of Allender say this is going to affect the Scottish economy? And then how did the European figures, which were very similar, project onto the UK economy?
Right. Come on,
Right, so the forecast for Scotland was growth of 1.3% for 2025 and 1.2% for 2026.
Yeah.
Adjusted figures based on these tariffs means that the forecast for GDP in Scotland has shrunk to 0.9% for 2025 and 1.1% for 2026. I don't know how that works. But as I say, that's the projection. Now, if you were to take their metric and put it onto the UK figures, and if we have the OBR and the Bank of England figures to work with, projections for the UK economy for 2025 is, by the OBR's figures, 0.7% growth, and for the Bank of England's figures, 0.9% growth. We've recently had them downgraded, if you remember, David.
Mm-hmm.
We've had them downgraded to 1.12% or something like that.
Yeah.
Down to 0.9 for the Bank of England and 0.7 for OBR. Now, if we take the metrics that have been used by the Fraser of Allender Institute, and we did look at European figures, I put them up for you, David. Although I think I've taken the graph down now, let's have a look. See if I've still got it, I can put it up for everybody else. I've still got a graph there. So we'll stick the graph up. We're only going to go with the 2025 figures here. And this is based on low tariffs. That's the grey bar here. No, that's high tariffs for the grey bar, isn't it?
Grey bars, high tariffs. The interesting thing about it is that we've got the forecast for low tariffs, and we've got the figure with medium tariffs.
Yeah.
And so really, when you look at both those, very little difference between high and medium. Medium and low, right? Whereas
what we're looking at really is growth with high. What we're really looking at here is growth with high tariffs, because there is already specific sector-specific tariffs which these 10% now go on top of. So what we're really looking at is the grey number, folks.
Yeah. Plus of that, you've got to look at any economics think tank that puts out numbers like this. You'll notice the further out they get in terms of time, the more massaged the figures are to make it look good. Right?
That's because it's more unknown, whereas you've got direct data at the moment, David, as you and I both know.
That's right.
Now, anyway, what it's saying here is now, in the European figures we have in front of us, if we look at the grey bar, growth will now shrink to 0.6% for 2025. If you take the metrics by the Fraser of Allender Institute and project them onto the UK economy, which doesn't quite work, folks, because England's basically a service economy, and there are no tariffs on the service industry. They're suffering from a different problem, and that's inflation. But that's a different story. But if we put the metrics across, what it would be is based on the Bank of England figures.
Thanks, Alistair.
Based on the Bank of England figures, hold on, scroll down. Based on the Bank of England figures, growth for the UK will now only be 0.5% for 2025. And if we take the OBR's figures, then growth will only be 0.3%. Thank you, Alistair. Now, that's a big problem for Rachel and accounts.
Yeah, but again, without wearing this down, I'm not wanting to wear it down. If you look at the report that Fraser of Allender Institute has done, it would have been as easy for them to do a complete figure out on the UK economy and then say the Scottish economy is going to be X, Y, Z, the Northern Ireland economy is going to be ABC, and the Welsh economy is going to be DEF, right? And it would have been easy. It would have been easy for them to do that, right?
But they are a Scottish specific think tank, and they only concentrate in Scotland.
Yeah.
And they've been like that since.
Because they're a Scottish think tank, does that mean they're only allowed to mention Scotland?
No, but these figures were done specifically for Scotland and the Scottish government.
But it would be easier for them to actually say, here's the whole of the UK, so therefore Scotland is this percent of...
What makes you think it would be easier for them?
It's number crunching, David.
So what makes you think it would be easier today, a number for 5.4 million people and a economy of 5.4 million?
Excuse me, something important here. Hang on. There we go.
What makes you think it'd be easier to model for 5.4 million in an economy than what it would be, or harder, or easier to extrapolate for 86.5 million?
Right.
What?
End of the day, it's like I look at the Fraser Vallender Institute the same way as most people do look at them. Is that when they produce stuff, when they do working out with this, they do tend to have an agenda.
Tell you what, Monday, you come back with your figures and what you've worked out.
I tell you, better than that, go look on my timeline at the moment, and it's got the old situation where Fraser Vallender Institute worked out that Scotland had created 60% of the UK deficit. And there's no way, I mean, this is an article from Professor Richard Murphy that we both like. And basically what he was doing, he was laughing at them.
We all laugh at the Jers figures. The mere fact that the Fraser Vallender Institute Fraser
Vallender Institute that year made hay regarding, this is 2018-19, right? They made hay on the fact that it counted 60% of the UK deficit. And everybody went, right, come on.
Michael Stewart also went away and don't talk shite. The Welsh Parliament went away and don't talk shite. The Scottish Parliament, but actually, the Fraser Vallender wasn't the only one that projected that year for Jers. They all produce nonsense, David, but we have to work with the metrics that are in front of us. Right. Really do. Unless you want to produce specific figures by yourself.
What I would say is, any of the wish was to do that, wait for a month, and then start to do the working out.
Oh, they will do it again in a month. Don't worry about that.
Early, right now, to actually see what the job, because a lot of the effects that we see are going to be not America to whatever country, it's going to be country to country.
Yes.
Because as those
folks,
yeah.
We're going to mention the game. If you want to know how big a tariff's been slapped on individual nations, stick the name of the nations in the comments, and we'll tell you how much they've been hit by.
Yep.
Okay.
There's something actually called Rachel from accounting. That's brilliant.
Rachel from accounting. Brilliant. Anyway, this is a real headache for Rachel for accounting, because if these predictions are correct, and we'll find out in 4 or 5 months, as you say, David, whether they're going to be correct or no. Yeah. Because these are just projections at the moment, and it is too early to say. And as I say, you take all these figures, and I even take what Richard Murphy's about to tell us with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, because in actual fact, it's not just what America's done to the world. America's done it; they've pulled the trigger, but the rest of the countries are dealing with each other. That's where the real effects are going to come from.
Chris, tariffs imposed in Israel were 17%.
Yes.
Russia don't trade with America, so there is none. Bulgaria, we'll get that for you now. Thailand was 36%, 46%, was it no? Anyway, Bulgaria, where are we? Let's get back up to B. Because I've got a full list here, people.
Yeah, you don't think he was doing this from his brain, do you?
Bulgaria is on the list, folks. Bulgaria is on the list. But they'll come under the European Union and it'll be 20%, folks.
I can
Who
give
else
you
we
Mars.
got?
I can give you Mars. It's 54%.
Belarus isn't on the list either because they don't trade with America. New Zealand, I do have for you, but I don't want to spend all my time on this. Now, David, what are the main indices that are going to be affected here?
Well, your automotive, your Aston Martin, and all these high-end motor car manufacturers like certain Land Rover products, they're going to be affected. So, to be honest with you, those kind of manufacturers, it's more in terms of how long it is before they deliver the actual automobile itself. If you buy one of the high-end Aston Martins, it could be a year or two before you actually see the car, right? And that's what happens with these expensive cars. Okay, they've got a 25%, a tariff on them, but in America, the people that are buying these are more interested in how much time it takes rather than how much it's going to cost them. At the end of the day, they're not interested in how much it's going to cost them. In fact, the more it costs, it means they can actually boast their friends. That cost me $3.5 million for that car, and they'd say it quite proudly. So it's a different thing. It's a different way of thinking. When you're rich, when you are fantastically rich, you're not interested in how much things cost.
Yep.
You're more interested in bragging rights.
And folks, anywhere that's in the European Union was hit with 20% tariffs. Okay, so we can take it by
the tariffs.
Aye, they did.
I was down there visiting that last week. I'll tell you honestly, having a great time.
I was asking about New Zealand. I think New Zealand was 12%, wasn't it, David?
Right.
Let me look. Aye, 10% for New Zealand, 10% for Australia. Some of the bigger ones.
Rachel from accounts has found 10 billion for the Lower Thames crossing. That's the what did it used to be called? Wasn't the Blackwell Tunnel? Blackwell Tunnel is the one that feeds the O2 Arena. What's the one that's on the M25?
Dartford Tunnel.
Dartford Tunnel. So Lower Thames crossing is another one. So she's found 10 billion for that.
Listen, they can always find money for what they want. Canada's 25%, Mexico's 25%.
Yeah, well, Canada.
China get hit with the highest tariffs because they already had 30% tariffs and they were hit with another 24%. So tariffs on Chinese goods are now up to 54% across the board.
What was the one? Taiwan.
46%.
And Taiwan on certain of the semiconductors that are produced, 88%.
That's what I just said. There are sector-specific tariffs as well. Rachel from accounts will no doubt find a way to make things worse. No doubt. Absolutely no doubt, Lorraine. But they say when it comes to tariffs, the hardest the way the tariff scale was worked out was based on a balance of trade deficit. So the UK and the US is a pretty balanced balance of trade, so the tariffs were lower. But remember that couldn't be right across the board because as David's just been pointing out, there are sector-specific tariffs. If you have a look at it, car manufacturers, high-end manufacturers, David was talking about, there was 25% tariffs on it. That will now be 35%.
Which whiskey?
It was 25%, it will now be 35%.
Yeah.
And the same goes for metals.
That's on top of the 75% tax on each bottle of single malt.
But that's a UK tax.
I'm saying, but all these taxes all blown add up.
Yes.
Right. And you start off with something that would cost a few pence per cup, immediately becomes an inordinate price.
Right, and as I say, it's sector-specific. As I say, the England is basically a service economy now, so a lot of this won't hit England. as bad. The problem for England is this will drive inflation up, and inflation in the service sector is already running at twice the normal rate of inflation, or sorry, 2.2% of the normal rate of inflation. So the underlying rate of inflation right now is 2.8. That's the Bank of England's number. But within the service sector, because inflation is also sector specific. You and I have spoken about this before, David.
Yeah.
And in the service sector, inflation is running at 5%, and this is going to shove it higher.
I think for future economic planning and thinking about is how much whiskey, specifically, how much whiskey did Scotland produce that went to America? What's the number, right? And we can actually say that that's going to reduce by X amount, right?
Well, probably 10%. As those who can't afford to pay the extra in America don't buy it.
Yeah.
Right, let's see what Murphy's going to say for himself on these tariffs, because he's talking about the policy as opposed to the numbers.
Yeah.
So
very
here
good.
we go. So let's pick Mr. Murphy up. And the tariffs only liberate the rich. So let's hear what Mr. Murphy's going to say.
Tariffs only liberate the rich. They do not, as Donald Trump would have it, liberate the USA from the burden of international competition, nor do they provide it with a free source of revenue which will reduce the tax burden in the USA. They don't do anything like that at all. In fact, tariffs will increase the price of a great many consumer goods inside the USA and in those countries who retaliate by imposing tariffs on products from the USA as well. Why is that? Because tariffs are a charge made on an importer of goods which they will inevitably have to recover by increasing their retail prices for whatever the product that they import is. It is as simple and straightforward as that. So why do these tariffs only liberate the rich? That's for another very simple and straightforward reason. The rich spend less on consumption goods out of their total available net income after tax than do those who are on lower income. This is obviously true. There's a reason why the rich are rich, and that is that they have money left over at the end of week, month or year. Those who are on lower incomes, by and large, don't. That's because they spend everything that they have on consumption, and if the rate of tax on consumption goes up, they will therefore suffer the highest overall rate of increase in tax as a consequence of the imposition of tariffs, and the rich will suffer the lowest overall rate of increase in tax as a result of those tariffs, and therefore we will have a pure regressive tax as a result inside the USA, which is, of course, exactly what Trump and Musk and all his cohort want. They are passing the tax burden of the very richest in the USA onto the mass of people in that country, and that is not by chance, I suggest. That is entirely by design. So tariffs are not about liberation. Tariffs are about putting impediments in the way of trade. You can argue that's a good thing if you want to reduce the volume of world trade. You can argue that's a bad thing if you think that actually having access to goods and services at the lowest possible price, which is what trade theory suggests we should do, is a good thing. But whichever way you look at it, tariffs are always going to be imposed most heavily on those with lowest incomes because they consume not only more out of their total income, but more goods out of their total income.
Right, before we move on with that, there is one thing that we can say, David, that's important to put in here. Rachel for accounts in the comments is trying to balance the books here in the UK on the poorest in society as well. It's just that Trump's going about it in a different manner. That's quite interesting. So we'll get Richard back up and let him finish off what he's telling us.
As well, and tariffs only apply to goods and not services. So, what is Trump doing by imposing tariffs? He is declaring war, not on the other countries of the world, but on the poorest people in the USA. who include most of the US middle classes, by the way, because right now the gap between the wealthiest in the US and everybody else is so big that this will also hit middle class America very hard indeed. Is this what those who voted for Trump wanted? I very much doubt it. Did they understand that this was the consequence of tariffs when he said that tariff was the most exciting word in the dictionary? I doubt it very much indeed. Did they realize that the price of their cars would go up? I suspect not. Did they realize that they would pay more for their computers? I doubt it. And that will be true of so many other things as well. So, Liberation Day for the USA as a result of tariffs? Pull the other one, Donald. This is only Liberation Day for the very wealthiest who won't be paying the taxes that they should be paying to support the state that they are utterly dependent upon if they are to generate the wealth that keeps them in the luxury to which they have become accustomed, because they need everybody else to spend, because the spending of the other people in the USA is the source of their wealth, and tariffs are actually going to reduce their well-being as a consequence. If anybody could get something wrong, Donald Trump can. He's got tariffs very wrong indeed.
Now, what was interesting about that, David, was the final outcome, according to Mr. Murphy there, was that the people who thought that Trump schemed the tax break to will eventually be brought to their knees as well, because they will have bankrupted the poor, the working class, and the middle class, who will no longer be able to buy the goods sold to them by the wealthy.
But that is making an assumption yet again that Trump doesn't have a clue of what he's on about. But don't forget, he's got other people round about him that are capable, right, and will be listened to within his own enclave, right? Okay. So at the end of the day, it's like perhaps this is something that is planned out to the nth degree, and this is
well, we are seeing a Republican senator starting to go, hold on a minute, is this a good idea?
Yeah, don't worry about that. I'm saying that don't take notes of that, because in actual fact, there'll be those who are inside the tent and those who are outside the tent within Trump's party. So you have to say, it's like perhaps there's a small number of people who have got a plan, and it is a plan, and it's perhaps the decision at the end of the day to impose taxes on certain rich people at the end of it all. Once they've got as much as they can out of the American people, normal folk, then right? So and what will happen is Trump will do that quite happily as he gets towards the next election. And the next election, by turning on the rich people and giving it back to the people, the normal ordinary people, you'll go, yeah, I told you I was going to do it for you.
Well, you know, that's the theory that Phil, another one of the YouTubers, who's always trying to play up or try to make excuses for how the Labour Party is behaving right now. That's how these people see it. That's how they think the Labour Party is going to behave. They'll balance the books on the shoulders of the poor and then boost the poor, which is probably what will happen. Well, 4 years of hammering them and then give them a wee tiny bit back just before the election.
It's one of I forget who was it said it the other week there. Right, it's the oldest trick in the book. Make something seem like it's the end of the world and all the rest of it, right? And then when it actually comes, well, it's not quite the end of the world, and you jump up and down for joy, but in actual fact, it's what they were going to give you in the first place.
Yes. Now, folks, Reagan Elite's in the chat. Check out his channel, and Mo Faceros is in the chat. Check out his channel. Moderators, if you can stick links in, thank you very much. Now, David, we don't really have time for much.
Yeah, no, just before we go, I was just going to mention that during the course of that speech we heard from Richard Murphy, what I did find interesting was if you hark back to the idea of the big expensive cars that from Britain that are now going to be slapped a tariff on, right? The people that are dead rich God, I don't give a fuck. It's just it's not
That's
a few $1 million. It's like it's just, yeah. Pure. Is that an extra inch? Right. Okay. Fine. There it is. Right.
You know, an extra 10% on your Aston Martin if you live in America and you can afford an Aston Martin doesn't mean
Right.
fuck all to you. You know, it's interesting that, as I say, the way they've based these tariffs is based on economies that trade with America and what the balance of trade deficit is with America, with these economies. It's quite interesting. The figures that we're getting at the moment, David's quite right, treat them with a pinch of salt.
Please.
Because we won't really know what the effect's going to be on our economy for a good while yet till we see what the percentage drop off on the Americans buying of our goods is.
And then if anybody you're debating with online said, but the Fraser Islander says this, you say to them, is that the Fraser Islander that had 60% of the UK deficit developed by Scotland?
David, you know that's not true. That was the fucking Gers figures. They just interpreted them.
They interpreted them and actually wrote it down as that. And that's what...
David, I said the same thing myself at the time. Michael Stewart, Rick Waller said the same thing at the time. How the fuck can Scotland generate 60% of the deficit? You know? So your point is mute, David. It wasn't just the Fraser Institute that did that in 2018. Yes. We all did. We all went, hold on a minute. And you know, back then I used to break fingers down. Now I just pull them out, look at them and go, fucking shredder.
The problem is, the lie is halfway around the world. Well, we'll get his bits on.
That's why I expect better than you talking this nonsense, big man. Absolute nonsense already. Right. There's not a single... I'll tell you what, you know the one that's always cracked me up, David, and you and I have all laughed about this for a decade now, is the term reputable think tank. Every time we hear that before, we're fucking laughing.
I know.
You know, you hear it on the BBC and the reputable think tank, the IFS, and you go, or the OVR. You have never managed to get
phrases. All about phrases are laughable. The one thing I'm getting a lot at the moment is unintended consequences. Right? See nowadays, when somebody's talking about unintended consequences, it means they haven't thought about it. Yeah. End of story.
Helen, I haven't heard. There's something I can have a look at. But Helen's asking, is it true that farmers are refusing to harvest the wheat from their farms? I don't know, but what I can tell you is that the amount of produce being planted for production is down by 22% because they can't harvest it. They don't have the manpower.
Right.
That's one of the Brexit effects. We don't have the seasonal workers coming in for Europe.
But also, aren't we talking about the genetically modified grain?
I don't know.
A wheat field that is grown next door's farm and genetically modified grain. Then what happens is it cross-fertilizes across on your land, right? And that means then you can't sell your crop as being non-genetically modified. I don't know.
Nathan, do you think Trump might do a U-turn on the tariffs? No, this guy actually thinks this is a sensible policy.
Yeah. Next week, you never know what he's going to say.
That's exactly it. It's a bit like think tanks. You take what they say with a pinch of fucking salt because next week conditions are different again.
Yeah.
Then, you know,
the good thing is, then you've got the Fraser Islander. You go, aha! What are you going to say this time? I mean,
what are you going to say tomorrow? Hold on. What are you going to say tomorrow when it's the Carnegie Institute that's producing the figures, or the Joseph Brown T Institute that's producing the figures, or the OPR producing the figures? Yeah,
Andrew cannot blooming answer.
I'll tell you what you're going to say. Go and do the sums your fucking self. If you're going to slag off the research, do your own.
Oh, yeah, okay. Right.
That's a fair point, David. you're going to slag off somebody else's research, take the research and go do the sums yourself.
In actual fact, I'm sensible enough.
I don't have time for that, actually, David.
I haven't got the time to actually do research on stuff that isn't going to become relevant for another month or two. Trying to do research.
If you're an importer or exporter.
Trying to do research on something that is literally right at the door is a bit too early in terms of stuff like tariffs. Tariffs of this amount, it's never ever been known of in this way before.
The tariff situation, research coming out that quick. It is. It regularly comes out that quick. And I'll tell you what, the other think tanks, they'll be hitting the further more morning. Their predictions will be on the tables tomorrow, I can assure you. The IFS, the OBR, the Bank of England. What we won't get is the mainstream media telling us about it. We'll have to go and look.
Yeah.
And that was the point of giving these figures, because the mainstream wouldn't tell us. You and I were all over the mainstream. I ended up having to go to Europe to get the figures, the projections for the UK economy.
Yeah, Morrison said the Milligan think tank.
Listen, one thing for sure, I'll not be a director on it. Now, folks, it's after 5 o'clock. Getting this into his hood is craw minute to be round up. It's getting difficult. In fact, I'll tell you what, David, I'll leave it running. You can let yourself out, right? I'll just bugger off to work and let you go. Let you keep going.
Right. Childish, right? Okay.
I'm not being childish, David. If you actually want to continue, I can leave it open.
Right, guys. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye, David. Time for it. Right. There you go.
Now, folks, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed the Bargy, especially with Bampot on think tanks. But you know what, folks? I do agree with him. I do. But what will happen is tomorrow we will get the IFS giving us predictions. We will get the OBR's predictions. We might not get them the mainstream media, but they will hit the table. We will get the Bank of England's predictions hitting the table as well. And by the end of the week, the end of next week, we'll have a whole plethora of different think tanks with figures for this nonsense. And David's right. You wait a couple of months to see what the reality is, because the fish market guy out in New York was worried about tariffs, and he breathed a sigh of relief because 10% is easy to pass up to his customers. Right, and before we go, David, one more super chat. Sorry, lads, Aki stole your kettle. You'd love to make it to you a cup of the BOE governor. Enjoy my tea here. Few quid, buy a cup of toodaloo. Thanks, Rachel, from account. Off you go, back to the gaffer. Say hi to the Bank of England governor for us, dear.
just walk in and go, Pierre, everybody thinks you're a bastard, but we think you're alright.
And Mark Telford's asking Rachel, can you claim that back on accounts? On expenses. Right, we're off. See you later, folks. David, we'll get a chance probably on Monday to rip the piss out of more think tanks. Okay, catch you later.